Hello, Mr. Paul here, back with another music theory video, and today I want to go over seventh chords a little bit. So this is kind of predicated on you knowing your triads really well, so hopefully you know your golden triads and you can figure out your major and minor and augmented and diminished chords. If not, maybe go back and check some of that stuff out. But with that being said, a seventh chord is simply when we're going to add another note to these chords, right? So for example, if I have a C chord here, I could add this note here, and I'll get C major 7. So one way we can kind of look at this is if I play a normal chord, I'm using the first scale degree, the third scale degree, the fifth scale degree, and then I can add the seventh scale degree, and that's what seventh chords are all about. We're going to add this additional note up here, the seventh. So before we get too deep into that, we should know there's two different types of sevenths, and the way I teach this is we should already know what an octave is, but if we go one shy of the octave, we get a major seventh. Then if we go two shy of the octave, we get a minor seventh. So you may or may not know your intervals pretty good, but when we're thinking of triads, our major chord is going to use the major third, then our minor chord is going to use the minor third, right? And if we don't have that third in there, we can't really tell if it's major or minor. That's kind of the thing that determines that, right? So just like we have a major third, minor third, we have a major seventh, minor seventh. So try to remember that. That's pretty important moving forward. So let's get into some of these common seventh chords. So first one I'm going to start with is a major seventh chord. So we'll just stick with C because everybody knows C, right? And that's easier. But maybe later on we'll try to move it to another key. So in your music you might see something that looks like, oops, that's not a C, that's a G. There we go. C Maj 7. Or you might see something that's like C and it has this triangle and a 7. So this is going to start off as a major chord. But then we need to add the major 7 to this. So that's the first one I just played. And that's going to be B natural, okay? Next most common one is going to be a dominant chord. Sticking with C. It'll just be a 7 after it. These are super common. So if you're reading lead sheets, you'll see dominant chords everywhere. This is also built off a major chord. But we're going to use the minor 7th, right? So pretty similar, right? Just one note difference. So here's C major 7, then here's C dominant 7. Right? So if you play classical, you're probably used to G7 pushing into C. That's another 7th chord, but that's an inversion, which is something we'll talk about some other time. All right, so those are the two chords that could be built off of a major chord. We got one that's built off a minor chord, so I'll show you that. And that'll be C minor 7. So if you see that little M in there, that means minor. Don't think that means major, because if it was major, they would actually kind of start spelling out the word major, or they'd have that little triangle. So this is going to be built on a minor chord. So C minor would be what? C, E flat, G. Kind of wrote that weird. Clean this up a little bit. There we go. And then we're going to add this minor 7 on there, okay? Pretty nice sound, pretty jazzy. I always think they sound like cool. I don't know. Maybe that makes sense, maybe it doesn't. Yeah, and you might be thinking right now, well, what if we put the major 7 on top of that? We would call that a minor major 7 chord. We're not going to dive into that because it's almost never used, but I always call it the detective chord. It has a very mysterious sound to it. So, all right, so that's the only one we're going to talk about that's built off the minor chord, but then we also have two that are built off of the diminished chord. So we have our half diminished 7 and our fully diminished 7. So we're going to start with the diminished chord for both of these. So I'll just go ahead and write those both in. All right. And then this one's a little weird. For the half diminished, we're going to use the minor 7. It's that B flat. I call that the toot-choo chord sometimes, because that is what trains use for their train whistles, quite literally. So there's some human study that says that half diminished chord tends to stand out to people. And then our fully diminished, where if we're thinking a diminished chord is just all minor thirds, or like we're skipping 2 notes and we're skipping 2 notes, we're just gonna skip 2 notes again and get another minor third on there, which lands us on A. Right? And fun fact about these chords, if you put another minor third on there or skip 2 more notes, you'll end up back on your root note. So fully diminished chords have some kind of interesting properties, one of them being that they're cyclical. They'll always land back on the note you started if you just keep stacking minor thirds. All right? So that is a quick breakdown of all these different chords using a C major chord, for example. So I'm going to cut this video off here, and I'm going to make a second one diving a little more into like ways of thinking about these things and how to use them on the keyboard. All right, see you on the next one.